We always talk about consent on the show, not age of consent. We're not like libertarians. We talk about consent. Yeah, so all right, so Matthew Crooks tried to steal Trump's life. It's like, okay, and you put your money with a guy named Bernie Madoff, and he made off with your money. You know, Owen Benjamin can go all day about this stuff.
Yes, I love it.
To me, it's a form of consent at this point. Like, they're always trying to all right, so again, back to the Jew stuff. Like, if you go to New York, there's fish wire around Manhattan.
I lived in Brooklyn. I know about it. Yeah, it's loopholes.
Brooklyn as well.
Yep.
And it's basically to mark their territory, and they're saying that this is their edifice, their home edifice. So therefore, on the Sabbath, they could do business or do whatever they have to do inside of this fish wire. They're tricking God. And it's just, it's not a new thing. It's constantly trying to trick God with the spiritual rule. So the spiritual rule is like, if you're going to do something to someone, they must consent. And I think the powers that be are like, hey, listen, we told these people, like we told them it was Matthew Crooks. You know, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in a theater by an actor. We're telling you. So if you agree, you've consented. And I think that they think that that's good enough. And it might be. I don't know.
They love the revelation. They're like, we made Anthony Weiner send pics of his wiener. Like, they're telling you, they're not lying. They're just, it's right up in your face. And it's crazy that not everyone's awake to that. It's so blatant.
You know why? Because I think sometimes when things are so blatant, it's almost like, nah, it couldn't be. Like, you know, we're talking about Donnie Darkin speculating as to whether or not Trump is the Antichrist. Well, Trump's father's middle name was Christ, and his mother's name was Mary, and his grandmother's last name was Christ.
Right.
It's very strange. What a very strange thing.
I don't think Trump is the Antichrist. I think I had my mind changed on that by and maybe. But
Alex is worried because she was about to maybe change her vote.
No, listen, I'm still gonna vote. I say it all the time. Like, I'm still gonna vote for him because who am I to deny prophecy? But yeah, of course. Also, I do think that there will be some more cheating. I just think if whatever's going to happen, make it as hard as you can. And really just go out there and do whatever you feel like doing. But I don't think he's the Antichrist. I think that, the book of Revelations, chapter 17 is talking about like the right-hand man to this Antichrist figure, and he'll be a magician or I forget exactly the word that's used in the Bible, but it's like an advisor that's using some form of sorcery right next to the guy that's in charge. And that guy will be a world leader, something like a pope, like a religious world leader of a one world religion. So if we're talking about a magician that's right next to him, you'll see it in Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. There's always like that character that dabbles in dark magic, and he's like, tell them to do this. And the king's like, oh, do this, you know?
That's so
Same
true.
thing over and over. So I don't think Trump is the Antichrist, but it's possible that he could fill that role with, the idea of magician, MAGA, the way he's acting. You know, I'm not a Christian, this sort of like word magic that he's putting on people.
Have you ever
What did you think about that, Shane? When you heard that he's on stage and he goes, my beautiful Christians, get out and vote. Get out and vote, Christians.
I've always...
This is the last time, I swear. And then he goes, I'm not a Christian, but I love the Christians.
Let's do both those things. Which one will I start? Way back when he was asked about his favorite Bible verse, I mean, it was eye rolling because he didn't even have one, right? It was pathetic. I never considered him a Christian. You know, I'm sure he believes, but I don't think he takes it as seriously or really like gives it much time. Although I wish he did. When he said that thing on stage about I'm not a Christian, it was like the white dress, blue dress situation all over again, because there were some people who didn't think he said that.
That's what Top says. Top nailed it with that too. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So what did you guys hear? Which version did you hear?
Well, I personally played it on my show Timeline Cleanse, and we slowed it down. And really, to me, the definitive thing was when he pulls when he says he touches his chest, and then he says nah, and he shakes his head no. And to me, the body language is what's the most telling, because it is like a blue dress, white dress type of situation, but he shakes his head no. And I know sometimes like you shake your head no, like that is, I don't know. I don't even know how you would do that. I can't make it happen right now. But I do think there are circumstances where you might shake your head no, but say yes. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're lying. But when it's in conjunction with what I hear is I'm not. And then he shakes his head. It even looks like his mouth articulates that way. To people, I would recommend going back and listening to it on half speed and watching it.
I saw it with subtitles, and it said, "I'm a Christian," but then I did notice the
right.
No,
Alex, you were asking what he said. People heard I'm a Christian or I'm not a Christian, but there is a weird thing when people hear the not, there is something weird. He's also just a horrible speaker. Yes. He almost never speaks in straight lines.
No, he does not.
And he's also a flailer. You know, when people always made fun of him they were like, he's making fun of retarded people. It's like, well, he's also that's how he speaks.
He confuses you, which is part of the magic, right?
Yeah, like that was the thing that with Brandon Straka, I forget the walk away guy, that was
the magic.
Right. So it's like, who's to know? I don't, but I never considered him a Christian, because
isn't there, I mean, he's literally at the Wailing Wall, wearing a yarmulke, kissing the wall. There is an integral tie-in with him in Israel, where there are many foundations within Israel that look at him as a messianic figure. Right. I know Top's reaching for it. I have the same one right here. This is our coin. We're going to be able to get into the third temple. That is Donald Trump's head next to their messianic figure, King Cyrus. Wow. It says, to fulfill 70 years, and he charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. And so they've minted a coin. They've given him a silver crown, as a group of rabbis who have given him a silver crown. I forget the significance of that. There's even articles written in 2018. I often have trouble finding it, but I think I've posted it. Donnie Darkin certainly posted it. If you go to his page and you type in David and Trump in the search bar, you will find an article written once upon a time, 2018 or 16, where there is a rabbi in Israel attempting to make a connection between the genetic lineage of the biblical King David and Donald Trump. There is a lot of Trump appreciation, let's just say. One of our favorite things to bring up is Super Trump. I
just read today, actually, about the King David. I'm trying to find it. I was looking for it about 20 minutes ago. It seems like they did find a connection to him and King David, their bloodline. Somebody was posting about it. Yeah, when I do find it, I will post that again on Twitter.
How do they do it? Sorry, Raven, you go, and then I'll follow up later. I want to hear your point.
I was going to say about Super Trump, which is basically just the Israeli boys choir singing about Donald Trump, and the entire language of the song is he is a superhero. It goes beyond like messianic figure, and it speaks much more to the sentiments of 2024, but it's literally called Super Trump, and they might as well be singing about an X-Men or an Avenger.
Well, I mean, you talk about trying to engineer a situation where someone looks Christ-like. We're talking about the attempt on his life. And for how many weeks, years leading up to, now, where people who are hardcore MAGA, like, they talk about him like he's Christ, which to me is like insane. Like, you just don't do that, and it's not right. But it falls in line. And once you build up someone in your mind as a caricature, whether it's out of love or hate, anything that happens to that person is going to become confirmation bias or whatever perception they have of them, which is what happens to all these people, which is why politics is a disease.
It's not good. And I do think this is a good point in the show to just remind the audience, who I'm sure to some degree, because a lot of people are won over by Trump. Mm-hmm. I said it earlier, and I know Top shares this sentiment. We like him. Mm-hmm. I like the dude. Same. Like, I really do. I liked his policies.
I was at a flea market today, and they had one of those like lawn sign cutouts, and I was this close to buying it and just putting it behind me.
Would have been hilarious. Oh my God, that would have been so funny. But, my thing is, I can like somebody, but also look at a mounting body of rather anecdotal evidence, although, it's strong, and go, well, that's weird. Why is that pile getting so big? Right. He is an integral center figure to the QAnon movement. Oh, yeah. And I don't think that QAnon is as bullshit as some people like to say it is. They call them Q-tards and things of that nature. That movement would never have been successful if there wasn't a tremendous amount of truth in it. People need to remember that at the height of QAnon, we were talking about Anthony Weiner's laptop. We were talking about emails with John Podesta and Hillary Clinton. We were talking about actual damning shit. I don't know if you remember when they got that laptop and the chief of police said that it was so horrifying what was on that laptop that they had to watch it in shifts, that his officers were throwing up and weeping or something of that nature. And I've been trying to find it. I was talking to Sam Tripoli about it. Tripoli remembers it, but you're real hard pressed to find the press conference where he said these things.
We're talking about Frazzle Drip, right?
Yes, essentially, yes. And I don't know if Frazzle Drip, I wouldn't say that Frazzle Drip's not real, but I do know that there was a time where there was a press conference and the chief of police was saying that his officers were weeping and
then they all ended up dead.
And then they all ended up dead, dude.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
So,
I mean, look, that stuff happens. The J6, all those police, not all of them, but a lot of those guys took their lives.
Well, I would argue, Shane, that when you say like nothing happens, I have a suspicion that nothing happens yet. It's not time in the script yet for this to happen. I think that there's a good chance a lot of the QAnon stuff will come to light and Trump will end up being vindicated on a lot of fronts. But what you really have to remember is that at the core of QAnon, it's Trump and the white hats are working to overthrow the deep state and the cabal. This is the core belief system of QAnon. QAnon would never have been so impactful if they weren't giving you a lot of truth. But I do think, Top and I say this all the time, the best deceptions remain as closely parallel to the truth as possible. They want to give you 9 truths to sell you the 10th lie. And the 10th lie is the most important one. And I think in this case, it's that Trump is a savior figure.
You reminded me of something, and Alex brought this up recently on a show, talking about theater and politics. Tom Hanks was the first actor to get COVID.
Tom Hanks was integrally tied into the QAnon.
We all forgot about Tom Hanks.
What happened to that guy? Is he in Gitmo?
Last I saw, I think he was bragging about Isaac Cappy dying or something like that in the desert. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Posting cryptid things in the desert in the same location. It was about roadkill.
Insane. And then what was the other thing? Oh, so I had friends who were deep into the Q stuff, and so I was getting it through them. And these are friends that like I deeply respect and super smart, and who have been listening, like to someone like Tripoli. So like 2 decades ago, like way long ago, before I was involved at all in anything. And, he was talking about like how they're talking about human trafficking and like how big it is. And then people would say to him or to me or just in general, the Q people, that's not happening. And I remember almost the day I heard that from someone, like, that's not happening. It was in Atlanta, Georgia, I believe, where they had like a container of all these kids, like 40 kids that were being trafficked. I'm like, no, that is happening. It's not ridiculous. Like, it's in the news right there. And it's local news. I like to trust local news sometimes,
There was a time during the Trump administration where quietly, without the biggest publicity, there were wins for the Trump administration for stopping giant child trafficking organizations, for locking people up and for saving children. This happened several times during his administration, and it would go COVID. And it would go pretty much undiscussed in the grand scheme of things, but you could find the articles. It certainly was happening, and I think that the timing of, to Top's point, COVID and sort of the height of this QAnon movement, because I don't really separate Epstein's Island from the QAnon movement, because they were talking about this before he got locked up. And people will say, oh, well, he was a known pedophile. He had been arrested for this before. Bill Gates decided to be homies with him after the fact. But so this isn't really a big surprise that he would be on their radar. There wasn't a lot of people talking about it. Alex Jones talked about it. The QAnon movement was talking about it. And sure enough, all of a sudden he gets arrested. It becomes this massive conspiracy. The meme of Epstein didn't kill himself reaches an unbelievable point of critical mass, and then the world gets shut down.
Yo, and remember, we kind of had a little bit of unity for like a day or two when people on the left and the right were both saying like Clintons are going to take this guy out before he died. Like they were like, we all were like, for sure he's going to die. And then he somewhat died. And it was weird because I was trying to write, I never did, but I was pitching stories about this former cop in New York who had been put in jail for supposedly murdering 4 Mexican dudes who were part of a cartel selling like coke and stuff. And I remember one of the days I pitched this to this one editor, it turned out to be the day that this same guy would be the person to beat up Jeffrey Epstein in the jail cell randomly. And then that's when everything went down. So I went back, everyone was turning down the story. And even afterwards, it was nothing, like crickets. No one wanted to publish a story. And that's when I was trying to write for like, the mainstream type spots when I still cared. And everyone was like, no, we don't care. I'm like, this is a crazy story. You sure? You don't want to write about this? It's crazy. So I have a friend who's been writing about that as well recently. And because that was a major part. Like, if it wasn't for that guy supposedly beating up Epstein, Epstein wouldn't have been put in that other spot where he supposedly took his life, right? And this guy, Nicholas Tartaglione, who's like a jacked muscle builder dude, he was given a cell phone in his cell. No one knew how that got there. So I have a friend who was talking to Nicholas Tartaglione from the prison. He's been in jail for all these years without a date. He's had no trial for the murder of those 4 men. That whole thing is crazy. But anyway, my friend who's a writer published some audio between them. He says he's innocent, which is something I never even imagined. I never would have thought like this guy's innocent, because you go and look up the story. I don't have to go through the whole thing, but it's an insane story. Like, for instance, just real quick, his accomplice, when they found out who the guys were who supposedly killed the immigrants that were then buried on this pig farm in New York, when they pulled over Tartaglione's supposed accomplice, the cop walked up to the car. Dude just took his life right there. It's insane stuff. Insane stuff. So anyway, I never would have even considered. What was that?
Is that the idea, Shane? Or are we touching on the idea that like this dude was pre-selected?
Yes. That's what I'm starting to think. Yes. And so
it sounds a lot like it.
He's been rotting in this jail for all this time in New York, which I know from friends who are NYPD, that they're like, that is like a really corrupt jail. And the person prosecuting him is Comey's daughter. So anyway, my friend gets in touch with him somehow. She's like got a huge Substack. This is a House and Habit on Substack. He's saying to her, I'm innocent. I'm like, that's crazy. I never even considered that. She publishes the audio. He disappears. After all these years, he's been taken from the jail in New York, where he's been since 2014 or 15, went to Oklahoma, but then he's gone. No one's heard from him. Crazy. So I'm like, yo, my friend's getting involved in some really crazy shit. So yeah, after hearing all that, I'm like, that's how I got the cell phone. He was always meant to be there. It wasn't like they just saw him there, like, we're going to use that guy. It's like, and he might not even know. He might not even know he was always put there. It's like, we're the engineers, these hidden ones, and we're going to create the scenario to then do the things we want to do. It's insane.
That's a great, see, that right there, though, highlights this idea that, like, I think we've kind of been lulled back into it, especially with the whole Trump assassination thing, as people are echoing that sentiment once again, that, like, do you really think they would do this? Do you think that you could keep that many people quiet? Yada, yada. And it's like, dude, the things that we have kept quiet, the things that we've made go away, the way that we've engineered the culture and fine-tuned the propaganda machine so that you forget 48 hours after it happened. I mean, Top said it earlier. It feels like Trump was assassinated like a year ago, or, you know, attempted to be assassinated a year ago. It's just, everything's moving so fast. I think they have, if you think that they're paying the people that make the iPhone addicting, if you think they're paying them a lot, they are paying the engineers of the propaganda machine a king's ransom to create something that has entirely brainwashed us.
And imagine
we have the attention span of goldfish.